Ladies and gentlemen, we were unsure as basketball fans whether or not Kevin Durant would want to stay with the Brooklyn Nets after his supposed best friend Kyrie Irving requested a trade and then was traded a couple of days ago. Apparently they had discussions, and now we have our answer, as Kevin Durant is a Phoenix Sun. The package includes Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, 4 unprotected first-round picks, and additional draft compensation, also getting Jay Crowder as part of the deal. This is an earth-shattering deal that makes the West infinitely more interesting. Let's talk about it. So let's go through this step by step here, because there's a lot to unpack. First of all, we'll look at it from the Brooklyn perspective. They obviously have been thrilled, I'm sure, with what they've seen from Cam Thomas and others in recent days. Claxton has, again, done a tremendous job of developing his own game, even though he's not necessarily the most diverse offensive threat yet. This is a young team with a good foundation, which, as a side note, makes it all the more hilarious that Kyrie would want to leave if he was actually about winning. But that aside, Kevin leaves a team that is now stocked for the future, which is a tremendous turnaround for them, given where they were after they were frankly fleeced in the James Harden for Ben Simmons trade a year ago. The Brooklyn team is certainly less offensively dynamic than they were 7 days ago. However, they still have a tremendous number of switchable wings. Their shooting is very deep. Cameron Johnson, one of the best three-point shooters in all of basketball. Mikal Bridges, one of the best three-point shooters, especially from the corner. And even if you assume that the Nets get nothing or may flip Ben Simmons to another team, I think that this is a team to watch tomorrow for further trades. They might deal Seth Curry, Joe Harris, other shooting to other teams that might want some of that shooting for a playoff run this year. This is a team that has established a foundation of really good players. Bridges, Nick Claxton, Cameron Johnson, Cam Thomas. A good number of players that can do diverse things on the court and can fill different roles, and Jacques Vaughn can certainly have a variety of options at both the offensive and defensive ends with which to construct lineups. They are a malleable core, and they only will get better, especially with the addition of some potentially high first-round picks from Phoenix in the future. This year, this is obviously a Nets team that's a bit unlikely now to win a playoff series, especially considering they're likely to drop a bit in the standings before the end of the regular season. But regardless, getting these young players, this young core, some nice playoff experience would be good and helps build for the future, which is, again, essentially the goal, or the number one goal, with the way that they've reconfigured their roster in the last 2 weeks. They should be fun to watch regardless. So they're marketable, and I think that Joe Tsai and Sean Marks as a group have done a really good job pivoting since, again, that really difficult trade that robbed them of a lot of future first-round pick capital in acquiring James Harden from the Rockets and then having to deal him so quickly afterwards. The Nets were in a tremendous amount of turmoil last summer when Kyrie was attempting to use non-existent leverage to get the Nets to trade him, possibly to the Lakers, before he opted into his one-year player option. And Kevin Durant obviously demanded that both Marks, the GM, and Steve Nash be fired, and was then talked off the ledge. So the fact that both of these guys clearly requested trades in the past week, and again, a huge amount of crisis was avoided over the summer, the Nets come out of this with a very bright future and having pivoted effectively to another timeline and plan. The one question that does remain from Brooklyn's perspective, and it is a fair one, is why now? Why not wait until the summer when other teams might be more in the loop and one can have a proper bidding war, even despite Kevin's obvious preference both last summer and at this deadline to go to Phoenix? Because, again, although this was a tremendous haul for Brooklyn and you have to love it as a trade package, they didn't get everything. There wasn't any DeAndre Ayton. Could Brooklyn have gotten a better package, or perhaps a package with better, more blue chip assets from a New Orleans or a Houston or something like that? Very possible. But at the end of the day, players' values and their markets fluctuate massively, sometimes from month to month. Kevin Durant is a guy who has had tremendously difficult injury issues in the past and is currently injured. You can't forget about that, and sometimes a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. This was a great package, despite the fact that it might not be as lucrative as what the Jazz got for Rudy Gobert, given Rudy's lower value compared to Durant. But it was abundantly clear at the end of the day that Brooklyn wanted out of the Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving circus business. They wanted players who wanted to be there. They wanted to build a younger core, and this was an opportunity where Durant still has tremendous value, and they wanted to take advantage of it. You can understand it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as I'm going to be putting out a lot more trade deadline related content in the coming days, including an analysis of all of the trades the Lakers have made. Sneak preview, I think they did a tremendous job not giving up too much and being able to reconstitute their roster into one that can actually play some defense, in addition to shoot a hell of a lot better than they could a couple of weeks ago. Flipping the script now to the Phoenix Suns, there is absolutely no doubt, if it wasn't obvious already, that this is a Matt Ishbia, I would like to win now, I'm a new owner, all-in move. He has dealt almost all of the first-round picks that he was allowed to deal in exchange for what is probably maximum a 2-year window, even though Durant is under contract for longer than that. They need to win, hopefully this year for their sake, and maybe next year. So again, this very new roster looks incredibly offensively deep and dangerous. They obviously still have Chris Paul, who is an all-time point guard and distributor, and a guy who has shown the ability, including in last year's playoffs, to have another gear in the postseason. Now, this year he has shown the most slippage in a game-by-game way that he's ever shown. So it's very difficult to project him forward with any kind of certainty, but it is possible he still has that gear remaining in his arsenal. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant obviously need no introduction. They can make shots from anywhere. They can drive the basketball, finish at the basket. They are shot makers, creators from every area. TJ Warren is another guy who's been a bucket his entire career and is working his way back from a long time off. Dario Saric, incredibly skilled. Damian Lee is having an excellent season, three-point shooting-wise. DeAndre Ayton, again, one of the most skilled big men in the game, despite his lack of enthusiasm going into the hard areas and posting up. I think that Phoenix is going to need him to post up with much more frequency, just so that they have better floor balance. In addition to the pick and rolls, I'm sure he's going to continue to run with Paul and Booker, and occasionally even with Durant. This team also has some grit, even though they lose Jay Crowder. Torrey Craig can certainly provide that. Ish Wainwright, same thing. So this Phoenix team is certainly one with the ability, especially offensive diversity of skills-wise, to challenge any roster, East or West. The issue is, again, Paul and DeAndre Ayton are going to have to demonstrate their ability to provide what this team needs, especially rebounding-wise from Ayton, on a game-by-game basis. They need to be able to secure their defensive glass, not get killed on the boards, and they need to have that good floor balance and ball distribution outside of just their two main scorers. They need to ensure that the ball hops in the same way that it hopped for the Golden State Warriors when Durant was on their team. If they can do some sort of approximation of that, obviously the personnel is different, show an ability to execute together in a way that makes each of their diverse offensive options viable and not just standing in the corner or in some other part of the floor, they become the championship favorite. There's no doubt about it. One team that comes to mind that could definitely be a super intriguing matchup for this Phoenix team, and just a danger in general, is the Milwaukee Bucks, as they have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who presumably would just put his head down and drive to the rim, test the Suns' rim protection 37 plus times a game, and just say, well, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to beat us offensively, because we're going to draw a lot of fouls, try to get your guys in foul trouble, and get to the line as much as possible. So in that particular situation, again, the defensive glass might be under siege, and the Suns would have to prove that even though Durant's done a great job as a rim protector and rebounder this year, that he and Ayton could handle that kind of responsibility. Both the Celtics and Bucks in the East have dynamic, tenacious defenders like Jrue Holiday and Marcus Smart, who would presumably be licking their chops at an opportunity to throw a wrench into these Suns' offensive workings. Matt Ishbia taking over certainly had a huge effect on whether or not Phoenix was going to make this type of deal. The fact that they held on to DeAndre Ayton's contract means that they now double their projected luxury tax payment to over $68 million. And again, the team that Ishbia took over before making this deal was significantly lower in ceiling, because Chris Paul, again, was showing significant signs of decline, which puts a lot of pressure on the rest of the roster, which actually, in context, has not had all that much success overall this season. Largely because of injury, but there's also been some underproduction by a lot of their players. So this is a home run swing, and one that proved probably necessary to put Phoenix in the conversation as a championship contender, a team that can win multiple playoff rounds using a diversity of lineups. We'll see how that works out. Monty Williams has a lot on his plate in terms of being able to come up with good defensive coverages, even though he has two good rim protectors on his team, and it's going to be a challenge to get everybody involved offensively. But these, at the end of the day, are good problems to have. which is what you want if you're a championship contender. The other obvious issue is that Paul and Kevin Durant are older players. They're going to have to demonstrate that they're at full health, in addition to the fact that Booker just came off an injury. Phoenix definitely has some health question marks, but if those resolve themselves, or at least resolve themselves enough that this team can be relatively together in the postseason, Paul should have a very low burden. He should really have to just bring the ball up and pass it, run the occasional pick and roll. This team will not rely upon him even as much as their team relied upon him last year, especially in the series against New Orleans, where he had to come up huge at the end of games. Again, this is a team whose backbone has been questioned. Well, that'll still be a question until they accomplish the ultimate goal, but certainly talent, depth, especially on the offensive end, is not a question anymore. We'll see in the coming days whether any teams make any more trades, or if the Suns get rid of some of their shooting depth, of which they have a ton, in exchange for perhaps more defensively minded players. But again, this roster as currently constituted can absolutely win a championship. One incredibly fun matchup would be to see Durant go up against his former teammates in Curry and the Warriors, and another one, perhaps even in the first round in a potential 4-5 matchup, would be against Dallas, the Sun Slayers from last year, and Durant's former teammate Kyrie, obviously. There is so much drama that one could see play out based on matchups in the postseason. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a fun rest of the deadline, and certainly, especially in the West, the playoffs look to be very intriguing at this point. Enjoy the rest of the deadline, everybody.